ability to see and resolve things in the distance due to angular resolution. So I'm very content with saying that the reason why we are seeing less of the ship on the top frame is because of the angular, is because of our eye's ability to resolve what it's seeing.
Can I say something to somebody who's actually spent more time?
One second. Let me just hold on. Just let me say this. How can we trust the guy that you just recommended on the science of this stuff if he can't even spell good right? Plain truth.
I understand. I totally follow you. Yep. No, that's good.
As somebody who's been in the ocean and seen this happen on numerous occasions, as Dave pointed out, you can use any type of mechanism you want. You can use laser sighting. You can use a camera. It doesn't matter. Once it goes over that edge, it's no longer having anything to do with your eye. There's not even a laser beam you could shoot that would strike that for targeting situations. How do you explain that on a flat Earth? That has nothing to do with your eye. If I want to launch a missile, right? And let's say it's a tow type thing where it has a little cable and it's a torpedo, and I want a direct line of sight. It has to curve to get to the target. If it's a missile and it's direct line of sight, let's say I would ping it with a direct laser. If it's over the edge, like it is, how would you explain that on a flat Earth?
You're bringing up variables that we would, I think, have to put into practice, Steve. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and the only thing I can say is, okay, let's get on the beach and do it, man.
Dr. Kroon, did you want to respond to anything that Travis said just a minute ago?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, what Steve brought up was an excellent example of how you can separate the two possible scenarios, I guess, whether it's like flat and it's just like perspective and the angle. I mean, like you could get higher resolution camera. You know, I do photography, and if you get a really high resolution thing, a really high resolution lens and all that stuff with a longer focal length, your image scale will be better. But I don't think that's what he was talking about. I just thought I might throw that out there. But the thing that Steve brought up is fantastic, because you can have something like even a drone that's capable of maintaining an exact height above the water, like let's say 2 meters, and it just flies straight out. And there will come a time where it would also disappear over that, and it'll have its own camera on board, and it'll say, hey, this ship that looks like it's sinking and just the spires are above the water, it's fine. It's floating right there. It's just the curve of the Earth is in the way. And when you go higher up from your vantage point, and then you can see it, because of trigonometry, now you're seeing over that curve. So I think this is an excellent example of curvature, and the flat earthers, their mantra, show me the curve. Well, we show it to them, then they goalpost us and move that goalpost back and say something about perspective.
No, it's not moving the goalpost. It's not moving the goalpost. It's trying to bring into the discussion something that we don't believe that you're taking into account, and that is the significance of perspective. So I'm gonna say it again in terms of that picture. I would say, because we are talking about something that we believe can be measured. Do you believe? Let me ask the question: do you believe that the curvature of the Earth can be measured?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you believe then that we can determine how much curvature should happen at 5 miles?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I do believe that determining the distance to those ships is an important factor. And because I don't know what the distance was to the ships in the pictures that Kyle put up, I can't give an educated response.
Well, if I may just remind you that the reason why there was 2 panels is because there's only one variable that was changing, as the observation height. That was so you keep everything else constant, so that you can only study the effect of changing one variable. It's a technique that you might use whenever you're taking observations or doing an experiment or whatnot. Scientists do it all the time, controlling the variables. So that's Sure, distance matters in an absolute sense. If you hold the height constant, that's sort of the flip side. But I believe that, as Dave explained earlier, that just this picture by itself is demonstrating that you could see over the curve. And on a flat Earth, you would be able to see from Shanghai to New York, because it's flat. You can see all the way across the whole world if the air weren't a problem.
I'm sorry. Wait, no, wait. I'm sorry. Can you go back and say that very last thing you just said? What was the caveat?
If the air were a problem.
Yeah. I mean, that's an absolute unfortunate comment to make, because that's not the world we live in. We live in a world where atmospheric distortion is a reality. We cannot see indefinitely. Why can't we see indefinitely? First of all, the limits of our eyes. Second of all, the distortion of the atmosphere. So one of the most common and frustrating things for me to hear heliocentrists make is the comment that you just made, saying that we should be able to see over vast distances. No, we shouldn't. There are too many variables of obstructions in our way. Land masses, buildings, mountains, trees, atmospheric distortion. So, no, we should not be able to see indefinitely.
Well, there's no obstructions between us and these ships, and you can clearly see the curvature. How do you explain that, though?
I've already given you my answer. I would have to put under scrutiny the distance of those ships, because that is something that if you say that let's just say, for instance, 50 miles, let's say those ships were 50 miles away, okay? At 50 miles away, there's 1,400 feet of curvature. Those ships wouldn't be able to be seen at all. So what I'm saying is that distance does matter, because I'm going to have to analyze your model according to your measurements, and I'm missing an important variable. Now, going back to, if we're looking at a flat Earth, and if I'm 2 meters looking at those ships, and I see the bottom half of those ships obstructed, and then I go up 12 meters, all I've done, and when I go up 12 meters, I can now see more of the ship. I've changed a variable that is the height, and that is a very important variable when we're talking about perspective, because perspective takes into account the angular change of the size of the object I'm looking at distance and height. It just is a part of the equation. You can't get away from it.
Okay. Have you ever seen Stephen Hawking's show called Genius? Let's get perspective out of this. Okay. So what Steve brought up, where like he's suggesting if you like shoot a missile, and I was like, well, maybe fly a drone so you can control like the height and stuff and have it go out, or he said like a laser. Stephen Hawking has a show where they actually did this on a lake. So there's no perspective, there's no eyeball, there's no, all of these things you brought up are just completely irrelevant. And so in the episode, he has these people shine this laser out onto a boat that they take out, and they have this big whiteboard, like a big panel, like 9 feet high, and they measure, and they have a marker, a whiteboard marker, and they mark a dot where the green laser hits it, and then they go out, and now they have to get on a ladder and go up here. They get to the point where they go so far out, the laser's not even hitting the boat. So what they do is they get in a helicopter and go, I don't know, it's like 5 miles out, and are on the like hovering on the surface of the water, more or less, or they're like on shore, and they have these guys back with a telescope, and they say, can you see us? No. And so they go up slowly in altitude in the helicopter until they could just see the helicopter with the telescope, and they said, okay, I can see you, now stop. What's your altitude? And if it's anything other than 0, you've just measured the curve. There's no eyeballs, there's no angles, there's no perspective. They were in a helicopter and they were below the curvature of the Earth.
Yeah, I have seen that clip. I thought it was from the Discovery Channel. So when you asked your question initially, it didn't ring a bell. This might not make you very happy, but Jaron, I think, did a very good job of walking us through debunking that video. So I'm pretty content with his explanation.
And what was
we will hold that against you.
So what was his reason?
I'm sorry?
What I didn't see Jaron's rebuttal.
Well, I would recommend that you do that because I'm not going to do it justice. One of the primary things that he did point out was that they did not show the fact that they leveled the laser. They didn't demonstrate the fact that they had actually done that. So there were certain nuances that were passed over in the video that seemed to intimate that the viewer would take it for granted that certain things were done. But let's say, for instance, one of the things that I'll say this. One of the things that Jaron said at the end of his video was, if this was me and this was my presentation, the ballers would run me over the coals. I would not get away with the way that these guys presented this information. So he had certain critiques, and he said, look, these are my critiques. And I think that they were justifiable critiques. So again, I didn't come prepared to analyze. I didn't come prepared to analyze Jaron's analyzation of the or his analysis of the Hawking video, but I would recommend you take a look at it and
sure,
take it into consideration.
I'll take a look. But from what you said something about how the laser wasn't level. I don't know how Jaron knows that to be a fact. That's an assertion, if I've ever seen one.
Well,
and
because
second
in the video,
Mm-hmm.
in the video they don't make the point of saying, okay, we are leveling the laser. This is what we've got. This is our height. This is the angle. That's the critique. That's how he would say, or that's how I would say he knew that he could make that critique because it wasn't in the video.
And the narrative, they state very clearly that they leveled it, though. So it was leveled, though. They said that in there. In the narrative,
okay.
If you listen to the narration.
Right, sure. Yeah, the problem with what we're doing right now is that I can come back with other video presentations, say D Marble's presentation of laser sighting over 7 miles. FE Core has a project that they worked on over a frozen lake in the Eastern Europe, and it was over a vast distance, and they've got laser sights. The Mark Sargent and those guys went with the National Geographic troop down to the Salton Sea in Southern California. So there are other counter videos that we can throw at each other where we go, look, this is what we have here, and then you can say, well, this is what I've got here. So it's a bit difficult to come down hard and fast and say, yep, you got me on that one.
Well, if I would just say one other thing, well, two actually, really quick. The helicopter is one of the second part of that demonstration that doesn't rely on a level anything. So I didn't catch that part. You were saying Jaron was able to debunk the helicopter too. He tried explaining away the laser with saying they didn't state on an entertainment show the exact procedures they used in this. Although I didn't catch the part where you said Jaron said that the helicopter thing doesn't work. Am I remembering that right? I'll watch the video later, but did you say that Jaron had an explanation for the helicopter?
No, I just basically said that there were certain variables in the presentation that he took to task. I don't think that I named the helicopter specifically, okay. But like I said, I didn't come prepared to regurgitate Jaron's analysis.
Sure, no problem. But I would point out how it's interesting, at least to me, that the exact height at which one would anticipate you first see the helicopter as it slowly rises from the surface. matched what actually happened. They use globe Earth math for that. So if there were any distortions